For topic three, we're just going to look at the cost of gasoline. So this is going to be really, really quick. Okay. So your annual fuel expense is the annual miles driven divided by the miles per gallon that your particular car can get. So when you buy a car, there's always some kind of average miles per gallon. And most of us know that if you're driving like a little tiny Toyota Camry versus, like a big Ford Expedition or something like that, they're going to have different gas mileage. So a smaller type sedan is going to get better gas mileage than like a big truck or an SUV. Okay. And so when you go out and you start buying a car, you already know that you can look at leasing versus buying new versus buying used. You also have different options with how much insurance you buy. Okay. You also need to consider, can you afford the gas for the vehicle? So as much fun as, a big SUV or a big truck may be, they may have a higher fuel cost than like a little sedan. So that is always something to consider. Okay. So the formula that we use is you take the annual miles driven, divide it by the miles per gallon for that particular type of vehicle, and then you multiply it by the average cost per gallon. Okay. Now, the issue here is that the cost per gallon can really fluctuate a lot during the year. So you might want to look at the average for like a particular time frame. And then the miles per gallon also fluctuates. So you really are going to have to look at the average miles per gallon. So if you're driving from Western North Carolina to the coast and you're going to be on the interstate the whole way, you're going to get pretty good gas mileage because you're not in like stop and go traffic. So you're going to get better gas mileage when you're driving, a long distance on the interstate than you are if you're in stop and go traffic like in the city. Okay. So even a car that gets good gas mileage, the gas mileage varies a lot depending on the type of driving you're doing. Okay. So this is a very general estimate for the gas mile or the fuel cost for the year. Okay, there's lots of factors that can change these numbers. Okay, so again, don't take this as like sheer fact. Again, we're looking at different types of driving. Okay, we're also looking at different costs per gallon throughout the course of a year. Okay, so it says here, suppose that you drive 36,000 miles per year and gas averages $2.87 per gallon. 36,000 miles a year seems like a lot. I don't drive anywhere close to that in a year. I don't think I have driven that much in the last like 2 or 3 years. But anyway, for this example, this person drives 36,000 miles per year approximately, and gas is an average of 287. Okay, so it says calculate the annual fuel expense for owning a hybrid car that averages 40 miles per gallon. Well, we would take the annual mileage, 36,000. We would divide it by the miles per gallon that this car typically gets. It gets 40 miles per gallon. And then we want to multiply it by the average price of gas. So $2.87. I'm not going to go to the calculator for this since this one's pretty easy. So on your calculator, you can do 36,000 divided by 40, whatever that is. It ends up being 900 in this case, and then multiply that by $2.87. Whoops, I just typed something wrong in my calculator. So for this car, if you had a hybrid, you could estimate, again, this is not going to be like a to the cent type of value, but you could estimate that you would spend about $2,583 for the year on gas. So as you are planning to buy a car, you got to think about leasing versus buying versus new versus used, the whole bit. And then you also have to consider how much insurance you need for your car and fuel cost. Okay, so for a hybrid, you're going to have approximately this much spent on gas in the course of a year. Now, estimate the same situation, but this time with an SUV that averages 18 miles per gallon. So we're still going to use the 36,000 miles for the year. We're still going to use the average cost of $2.87 per gallon. So 36,000 divided by 18 times 287. So again, 36,000 divided by the miles per gallon, which is 18 in this case, and then we're going to multiply that by 287. And we get that the very rough estimate for fuel costs for this car would be $5,740. Okay, so when you are considering buying a car, you also have to consider gas. Okay, so or if you're like my friend who is an empty nester, she has an electric car. So there's that. All right. So lots of things to consider when you're going out there and buying a car. Be mindful, do some grunt work, do some not investigation, but do some research. Okay. So that's it for section 8.7. The last section in this chapter that we're officially going to cover is home loans. There's also credit cards, but I find that the time and investment into figuring out the calculation is not worth the reward. So just know that we're not going to officially cover credit cards, okay? But we will cover the cost of home ownership. That'll be section 8.7.